There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Jon Miller. He is the CEO and co-founder at Engagio. Jon, how you doing today, sir?
I am great. Good to talk to you.
Hey, good to have you on. For those of you who didn't catch episode 437, Jon was on that episode and shared some great knowledge with listeners back then. So feel free to check that one out after you listen to our chat today. Jon is currently CEO and co-founder at Engagio, has a great history in the MarTech space. Jon, for folks who aren't familiar with you, I would love for you to share with listeners a little bit about your backstory and then also what you and the team at Engagio are up to these days.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in marketing technology almost my entire career. Most notably, before starting Engagio, I spent 9 years where I was the founder and first chief marketing officer at Marketo. Many of you know Marketo is the leading marketing automation platform that was recently acquired by Adobe. My experience at Marketo led me to see the opportunity for a new kind of platform focused on account-based marketing. Simple analogy is that the kind of marketing we were doing with Marketo was like fishing with a net. It was really good when we had a broad audience and we didn't care which fish we caught. We just cared, did we catch enough fish? But as soon as we're trying to go after the big fish, turns out they don't just swim into your net. You have to find ways to reach out to them proactively, more like fishing with a spear. And that's really what we're trying to do with Engagio. We're trying to build a new kind of marketing platform that does for account-based marketing what Marketo did for demand generation.
I love that. That is a great way to break it down. I've heard that, fishing with a spear versus a net, but never quite the reasoning there, which I think you put really, really well. The big fish don't just swim into your net. So I love that analogy of ABM versus traditional demand gen and inbound. So one of the things, Jon, I wanted to have you speak to before you talk a little bit about, what we've learned in ABM and what people can do to get up and running with their ABM campaigns right now is why, in your opinion, is ABM just a passing fad?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because marketing has seen fads that have come and gone, whether it's predictive or content marketing or things like that. I think the, two main reasons why ABM is not a fad. The first is that at its core, ABM is just a different way of doing marketing. Right? ABM is not technology. It's not a campaign. Right? It really is a fundamental way of aligning your sales and marketing team that makes more sense if you're going after the bigger accounts. So as long as companies are going after larger deals, it just makes natural sense that the way you have to market to big deals is going to be different than the way you market to small deals. And whether you call it account-based marketing or something else, the point is that's not going away.
Right.
The second reason why ABM is not really a fad, is honestly, I just think it just makes too much sense as a core idea. The sales team has always been account-based. At the end of the month or the end of the quarter, sales doesn't talk about how many leads they closed. They talk about how many accounts they closed. And so really, it's kind of messed up that marketing has spent all this time talking about leads. It's the fault of tools like Marketo. ABM, at its core, in some ways, it's just marketing getting aligned with sales and talking about accounts just like sales does. So everybody's really on the same page. Those are the two reasons I think it's not a fad.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Oftentimes, sales feels like they're translating things from marketing, whether it's with the language that they're using with clients from kind of generalized marketing terms, or they've always had a target account based approach. So to me, it's just having spent 10 years in B2B sales that it just makes sense. There's a lot of opportunity to align sales and marketing, which seems to be that nirvana that everyone is chasing there. Would you say you've seen make some good strides in sales and marketing alignment, Jon, by moving to an account-based approach?
Absolutely. ABM helps drive sales and marketing alignment. I mean, we got to remember, like, this stuff is not new. Right? I mean, people have been trying to market to large strategic accounts for years and years and years. Right? The only thing that's really new here is the technology is emerging that helps make the whole thing more scalable. Right? And it's so the challenges of marketing and sales aligning with each other. Here's what I'll say: the fact that marketing talks about leads and sales talks about accounts is not the only reason marketing and sales can't struggle with alignment, but it certainly doesn't help.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. Awesome. So, Jon, I know you wanted to talk about a little bit on some of the things we've learned in the last 3 to 5 years as, account-based marketing has gained traction in this new way. As you said, it's not something that's brand new, but the way that we're able to scale it, the way that we're able to apply technology for better attribution, better coordination cross-functionally, some of those things have changed. So lessons from the last 3 to 5 years in the current state of ABM.
Yeah. I mean, so as you know, I just, back when we were first starting Engagio, I published a book called The Clear and Complete Guide to Account-Based Marketing, which at the time, about 110 pages long, was, I think, the Bible for ABM. And we just released, the brand new second edition, expanded now to 175 pages. So there's a lot of new content in there that's based upon what we've learned. A couple of the highlights I'll talk about. The first is really the understanding that ABM is not one size fits all. There's different styles of ABM. So just like I talked about spear phishing versus net phishing, even with ABM, the kind of marketing you're going to do for a $5 million a year account is going to be different than what you do for a $100,000 account. At the really high end, that's truly bespoke strategic ABM, where every touch and every interaction with the account is researched and customized for that specific account. You will then also have, scale ABM, which is much more segmented, where you're really focusing on micro clusters and business problems. That's good for your large 6-figure deals. And then you have programmatic ABM for your 5-figure deals. The key, I think, is to just recognize what are your deal sizes for your company, and then define how are you going to treat the account. The biggest mistake I see is that companies pick too many accounts. And then therefore they can't really put enough wood behind the arrow to focus on to deliver the level of personalization and relevance that those large accounts really, really matter. So I think that's one insight that we talked a lot about in the book. I think a second, I'll do 3. The second one is we've learned a lot about what tactics work in ABM and which tactics don't. And there's a corollary to that. The tactics that work vary based upon the size of the account and the style of ABM you're practicing. I think account advertising is probably the big area of biggest learning. Because if you look at it, when you hear about ABM, you hear about ads a lot. And that's not surprising because so many of the vendors who talk about ABM are ultimately selling ads. That's the core of their business. The reality, though, is if you're trying to reach the executive at a big account, you're probably not going to really get them to engage because you have display ads going on. I don't click on ads. I don't even notice ads. Most people don't notice ads. So while we generally think that ads can be an interesting complement to a already mature, robust ABM program, one of the things we've learned is that by itself, just because you're doing ads, doesn't mean you're doing ABM well. And instead, what really does matter is bringing in much more of a human touch, much more of a really personalized, relevant interaction. Because again, you're trying to connect with executives at big companies. And the point is they live in a noisy, crowded world, and we have to really find a way to stand out. Which then leads me to the third, which is when and where does technology really work to help scale ABM? And I think, one of the things that I've seen is that there's times where automation is great. Things like any of your data operations or ways to alert sales when key things happen at key accounts, defining different segments within your target account, and then, kind of triggering the right appropriate follow-ups and so on. This can be, things as simple as alerting sales when any, new executive at one of their accounts, really starts engaging, or it can be more complicated ways to really start to, streamline orchestrated plays. The key, though, is to really recognize, when automation makes sense, some of the examples I just gave, and when actually slowing down, being less scalable, and bringing that human touch in is really going to matter. When do you bring in a personalized message from one of the executives on your team? Right, that can have a huge impact, but you're not going to do that with automation. That's and finding the balance between automation and human touch is really a key part of making ABM work.
Yeah.
So those are three I'd highlight. Could always talk more, but I think those are a good three to focus on.
Yeah, I think those are good takeaways. We'll also link to the new edition of the ABM guide in the show notes for folks that want to definitely take a deeper dive. I think those are some great takeaways to give people a little bit of a taste and some tactical things that they can think about right now, Jon. As we look forward, what do you see coming next in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years in ABM? What do you see changing? What do you see growing? What do you see us maybe doing away with?
Yeah, well, I think I made the analogy with Marketo and demand generation before, and I think that really does give us a lot of signposts for how to think about what's going to come ahead. I think the first thing we're going to see is just a maturation of the category. There'll be more people out there who will say that they're account-based marketers. And when they say that, it won't just be some fancy thing they stuck on their LinkedIn. They'll say it because they've actually done it now for a while. They've actually sort of been in the market doing it and seeing what works. We'll see the emergence of more consultants and agencies that actually have real in-world expertise doing this stuff and sort of, creating a deeper level of maturity that way. And then third, we're going to see the technology platforms evolve. Because the reality is when you think about demand generation, there's no one technology that a company buys to support demand gen. They might have a platform like Marketo at the core, but they're also going to buy a bunch of other things, like a webinar platform, maybe something to help with search, maybe something to help with content, and so on and so on. There's a reason why there's 5,000 marketing technology companies. I think we'll see something similar in ABM. Right now, people talk about ABM platforms, but really when they talk about that, what they're talking today is like a checkbox of a bunch of different things, ads and account selection and measurement and so on. I think what we're going to see, just like in demand gen, is the emergence of real platforms that help with the core data orchestration and measurement challenges, and then other tools that are supporting ABM tactics, like advertising and so on. What that will ultimately probably end up happening is that those ABM platforms over time will get, more and more blurry with what people are doing with their current marketing automation platforms. I ultimately think in the long run, Engagio, we're in a few years at Engagio customers, they may not need a separate marketing automation platform. They'll just have Engagio, and that will be their core for both their demand gen and ABM.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's what we've seen in other categories. Whether it's CRM or marketing automation, oftentimes it starts by people together, not necessarily cobbling together, but finding ways to make the right technology work together. But eventually, whether through acquisition or development of a certain product to expand and take care of those adjacent tasks or other things just outside of their realm to start with, it's a natural progression. So I think it makes a ton of sense to kind of look at things through that lens of the future.
It's story time again, and we're talking about search engine marketing. Today, I'm going to tell you about a challenge within Pelican Case's B2B division. Pelican needed a partner with deep B2B expertise that could get them a massive bump in leads from their pay-per-click campaigns without increasing spend. After vetting a handful of agencies, they decided to go with Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency located in Southern California. Directive took on this challenge by refining their targeting and building custom landing pages for their advertising efforts. Once implemented, they saw a 208% increase in conversion rate. Needless to say, Pelican Cases met their initiative. And I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Jon, I want to leave folks with some tactical applications on getting up and running with ABM today. If they're really just kind of in their organization, are there some things that you would recommend in getting started that you could leave listeners with today?
Definitely. I mean, having seen this now with over 250 Engagio customers, there's three things I can point to that I think, companies should really think about for getting up and running. The first is that you have to recognize that your technology and your systems today aren't account-based. This was what happened to me at Marketo. When I was trying to do ABM using Marketo and Salesforce as my platform, I drove the team crazy because you don't really have an account-centric view of your data, right? So the number one thing you got to do is actually build your account foundation, a single view of the account. And a core piece of that is something called lead to account matching. How do you take all the people and make sure that you can tie what they do to the right account? Not sexy in reality, but without that account foundation, you can't really do anything else in ABM. Number two, don't overthink the account selection process. I've seen companies take 6 months to get sales and marketing aligned around the perfect account list. And that's a good process to go through, but the reality is you'll probably get better results if you just basically start with a simple list of accounts that look like they're in your ideal customer profile, and then just help your sales team prioritize the time and energy based on which accounts are engaging with you already. And then, get up and running, start building your ABM muscle with this sort of simple account list, while you can then run the more detailed account selection process in parallel. And then number three, ABM done really well takes time. It takes time to see results. And the challenge, though, is we can't always afford to wait, right? We need pipeline now. And so there's a simple play that companies can do that's pretty fast to get up and running that can generate, pipeline now and start building the ABM muscle. And that's just a simple marketing and SDR coordination. So what we do at Engagio is we send a direct mail package to somebody at the target account, and then we have the sales development reps follow up once the package is delivered with relevant customized messaging. Just something simple like that, not hard to get up and running, and can really deliver results. Just that basic SDR outreach with marketing air cover is a pretty quick win. So those are the three things I'd point to for how to get up and running quickly.
Yeah. I think that speaks to something that a lot of people struggle with is how are we going to show some quick wins that we are headed in the right direction with a long-term play, that because it takes a while to make that shift organizationally and get the pieces in place. And also if you're targeting bigger accounts, those are longer sales cycles. So how do you build some quick wins into that turn so that you know you're heading in the direction before you get to see? I think those are really great things for listeners, Jon. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast again, Jon. Thank you. For people listening to this would like to stay connected with you, learn more about Engagio, or find the second edition of the ABM guide, what's the best way for them to follow up with you?
Well, I do encourage everybody to grab your free copy of the book. You can get it at engagio.com/guide. That's really easy to remember, engagio.com/guide. And if you want to reach me directly, I'm on Twitter at Jon Miller. So would love to connect and continue the conversation.
I love it. Jon, thank you so much for joining us again on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.